You're listening to the weekly Parsha podcast recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramat Shemesh Israel 5777, 2016. This week is Parsha's Vzos Habracha. We're going to complete the Torah. We're going to read the last Parsha of the Torah on Simchas Torah, the last day of the holiday of Sukkot. And I'd like to share with you a thought about the Parsha and about the concept of Sukkot, the core essence of what Sukkot is about, this holiday where we come out of our homes, we sit in a temporary dwelling place, we cover ourselves with the Sukkah, with the divine presence, we remind ourselves of how Hashem covered the Jewish people with his clouds of glory during their sojourn in the wilderness 3,300 years ago. And in commemoration of this fact, I'm actually recording this podcast in my Sukkah. I'm sitting here under the Sukkah, which reminds me of the wings of the Shekhinah, the wings of the divine presence. And so if you hear some birds chirping more loudly than usual, you hear some children playing outside, that's because I'm sitting outside. But the idea I'd like to share with you is really at the beginning of this week's Parsha, at the beginning of Vzos Habracha. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, gives the blessings to the Jewish people, and he tells them about all the different special characteristics that each of the tribes have. And it's very clear that the blessings of Moshe Rabbeinu, of Moses, parallel and are a continuation, in a sense, of the blessings of Yaakov Avinu, of Jacob, when Jacob gave those blessings to the tribes, to the original progenitors of the tribes themselves, the Reuven, Shimon, Levi, etc. So the blessings here parallel those blessings. And I'd like to share with you the Medrash at the very beginning of the Parsha that speaks about the continuity between the blessings of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Moshe, and interestingly, there's a continuation somehow, we'll need to understand this as well, to the Tehillim of David HaMelech. King David's Psalms are somehow connected to the blessings of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Moses. Now, to illustrate this idea, our sages chose in the Medrash, as we've seen a few times, to speak about a concept of a halacha, something that's to do with Jewish law. And through that concept in halacha, through that idea that we see in Jewish law, it can come to teach us something that's connected to our Parsha. So our sages, in speaking about the blessings of Moshe Rabbeinu, in speaking about the blessings of Moses, wanted to give us a connection to our blessings, to the blessings that we make every single day, 3 times a day. We say the 18-fold prayer, which is actually 19 blessings. We refer to it as the Amidah, the standing prayer that we say 3 times a day, Shacharis, Mincha, Maariv. And those 19 blessings that we say every day, there's an interesting concept in Jewish law. We have the idea that we say it quietly to ourselves. It's called the Shtila Shmon Esrei, the quiet Shmon Esrei. We say it quietly to ourselves. And when we're in synagogue, so the Amidah is repeated. These 19 blessings are repeated by the Shliach Tzibur, by the one who represents the entire congregation. Now this practice heralds back to a time when many people were unfortunately illiterate, could not read or didn't know the prayers themselves, and therefore they needed someone to say those prayers on their behalf. And the cantor, the Shliach Tzibur, the one who represents the congregation, would indeed say those prayers on the behalf of the entire congregation. Now the question is, let's say in the middle, they didn't have prayer books at those times. Let's say in the middle of saying the prayer, repeating the Shmon Esrei, the chazan got stuck. Let's say he forgot the blessing. He's in the middle of saying a blessing and he forgets what to do. He forgets the next lines. And for whatever reason, no one can help him out. No one can remind him. He just can't pull it together. So what's the halacha? What does one do in such a case? So the Medrash tells us it's actually a machlokes, but we're going to look at the second sheet of the second understanding. Medrash says like this: someone who is in front of the teva, in front of the ark, and he's representing the congregation, makes a mistake. Yavar acher tachtav. Someone else should come and take his place. Uminayin hu maschal. Now the person who's starting in his place, where should he begin from? Where should he start from? Should he continue from the place that the person before him left off? So this explanation over here says that you continue from the same blessing that the person made a mistake. You don't go back to the beginning of the Shemona Esrei, you don't go back to the beginning of the prayer, rather you continue from where the person left off. Where did we learn this idea from? We actually learned that when it comes to blessings, we always continue from the point where the last blessing left off. We don't go back, as it were, to the beginning. How do we see this? We learn this out from the Patriarchs. Lama. How do we know? We find that each one, when they would say a blessing, when Abraham said his blessing, when Yitzchak continued the blessing, so to speak, when he gave it over to the next generation, he just continued from the place where Abraham left off. And Jacob did the same. Ketzad, how do we see this? We see that Abraham gave a blessing to Isaac. We see a reference to the blessing in Genesis chapter 25, verse 5. Abraham gave all that was his to Isaac. So it uses the lashon, uses the language of vayiten, which means to give. He gave. So there's a difference of opinion as to what it was that was given over. What was he giving? Rabbi Yehuda says that he was giving him the firstborn rights. Rabbi Nechemiah says, bracha nasan loi. He was giving him a blessing, which it's interesting, obviously, that the word bracha and bechayra have the same exact letters. The concept of the firstborn, the rights of the firstborn, that double portion of spirituality, that involvement in bringing the karbanos, the sacrifices, etc., which are connected to the firstborn. They're obviously connected to the concept of blessings. Perhaps we'll see more about that. But Rabbi Nechemiah says the point here is that Abraham was giving blessings to Isaac. That's what he was giving to him. Kinin shenemar, like we find that the word giving is used in the context of blessings. V'yitein lecha ha'elokim, that the blessing that was given by Isaac to Jacob had the word v'yitein in it. It had the word to give. God should give to you all of the different blessings. So we see that the idea that Abraham was giving over, the giving that he was giving was blessings. Now Isaac gets up, he wants to give the blessings to Jacob. The place where my father left off is where I'm going to begin. My father, the last thing that he did was he did a vayiten, a giving. He gave the blessings. I'm also going to begin with vayiten, a giving. That's why, that is the very reason why Isaac started off the blessing of Isaac to Jacob with the word vayitein, he shall give. The idea of giving is very much connected to the concept of blessings. And it's important to point out, as the Eitz Yosef explains, the same medrash is brought down in the end of Bereshis, and the Eitz Yosef explains there that the concept is that each one was showing respect for the previous one's blessings. If I'm going to give you a blessing, but you've already received blessings from someone who's greater than me, so I'm going to acknowledge that the person before me who was greater than me, who gave you blessings, that his blessings are greater than mine. I'm just picking up, so to speak, from where he left off. I'm not, going to give you something greater than the greater person gave to you. I'm just going to pick up where he left off. So there's a tremendous humility in the avos as we go through them, and we see that they're continuing, as so to speak, from where the other person left off. The Medrash continues and says, how did Yitzchak finish off his blessings? Bekriya. He called out, Shenemar v'yikra Yitzchak el Yaakov ve'varich Esai. Isaac called out to Jacob and he blessed him. So there was a calling out. When Jacob got up to give blessings to the tribes, to all of his 12 sons, I also want to start off by calling out. Shenemar v'yikra Yaakov el Banav. Jacob calls out to his sons. So it's very interesting because there's two different things really going on, and we need to understand it, that there's the actual blessing itself, the wording of the blessing itself, but there's also the way that the blessing is given. There's a vayitin, a giving over, and there's a calling. And soon we're going to see the word Vzos, which denotes a very specific, this is the blessing, like our Parsha starts off, Vzos Habracha. This is the blessing. So the Medrash continues and says, how does Jacob finish off his blessing? Vzos, with the word Zos, which means this, Shenemar. Vzos asher dibra lehem avim. And this is what Jacob spoke to them. This is what he said to them. So there's a demarcation, a clear denoting, a statement. This is what he said. This was the blessing that he gave. That same word Vzos we find at the beginning of our Parsha. When Moses got up to give a blessing to the people of Israel, I'm going to start off with the same way that Jacob left off, with the word Zos. This. How do we know this? From that which it says in our Parsha, Vzos Habracha, and this is the blessing. We need to understand what is the concept of and this have to do with blessings. But the Medrash here doesn't give us the conclusion of the Medrash, which we find elsewhere, but the Eitz Yosef brings it, that we find that Moshe also finished off. Ubamech chasam Moshe. How does Moshe finish off his blessings? He says, Ashrecha Yisrael. He speaks about the fact that praiseworthy are you people of Israel. Am Noishav Hashem. You are saved by God. God is your protector. V'af David. Now it's very interesting. David also, even though he's not saying a blessing, he's saying praises. Kishabot loymar tehillah. When he comes to say praises, when he comes to say tehillim, when he comes to say the praises of God, which are embodied in the Psalms, the place that Moses left off saying, Ashrecha Yisrael, praiseworthy are you, O people of Israel. That's where David picks it up. Ashrei ha'ish, he says, praiseworthy is the one. Ashrei ha'ish asher lo holach batzas v'sham. He hasn't gone in the ways of the evil ones, the wicked ones. Goes on to speak of the praises of a person who goes in the way of God, who keeps the mitzvahs, he's focused on learning Torah. But we see, very interesting, that somehow there's a connection, as we mentioned at the very beginning, that somehow there's a connection between the praises of Tehillim, of Psalms, and the concept of brachas, of blessings. We need to understand, what is the idea of blessings? What is the idea of the brachas that Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the patriarchs are giving, that Moshe is giving, and how does it connect to the Tehillos, the Psalms of David, King David singing those praises of God throughout all of the events of his life? What is the connection between these two concepts? And also, what is the idea that when someone gives a blessing, he picks up from the place where the previous one left off? What is the idea of that? What is the idea of the continuity between the different blessings despite the distance in time? From Abraham to Isaac giving the blessings, from Isaac to Jacob giving the blessings, and certainly from Jacob to Moshe Rabbeinu to Moses, there was a great period of time between them. And from Moshe Rabbeinu all the way to King David, also a great amount of time between them. What is the idea that the Medrash is telling us, that there's somehow a continuity between these different blessings? Now, to begin to understand this, I'd like to share with you first a thought that has to do with the idea of Sukkos. Like I said before, I'm sitting inside of my Sukkah. I'm enjoying the schach, the shade that's being provided for me, reminding me of the shade of the divine wings, so to speak, the divine presence's wings, protecting me, protecting the Jewish people throughout history, and specifically in the time that they were protected in the wilderness. So on Sukkot we have two mitzvahs, two main commandments that the Torah obligates us in. One of them is to build this booth, this sukkah, which we sit in, like we described, and we're surrounded on all sides. We're completely inside of the mitzvah. It's one of the only places, one of really two places that we see that a person is completely surrounded by the mitzvah. He completely is engulfed by the mitzvah. The other mitzvah that we have is the mitzvah of the Arba Minim. We take these four species, the myrtle branch, the willow branch, the palm branch, and the citron, the esrog. We take these four species together, different amounts of each one, and we wave them in all the 6 different directions. So we move them back and forth between our heart area and the 6 different directions, to the right, to the left, forward, up, down, back. But it always comes back to the center, to the heart, to the person himself. And it's very interesting. There's a halacha that the best way to perform this mitzvah, one is supposed to do it at the first time that a person does it, let's say in the daytime, is to take the lulav and to do this action, the waving of the lulav, inside of the sukkah. And what is represented by this idea that one takes these 2 different mitzvahs and combines them, the 2 different mitzvahs of sukkahs? And I think that the concept is that the sukkah surrounds us. The sukkah reminds us of the divine presence, of the fact that Hashem is completely surrounding us, completely surrounding the world, not just on a national level, not just on a worldwide level, but on a personal level. God is there surrounding each and every Jew. God is all-knowing, omniscient, and God sees everything from the outside, so to speak. But when we take the lulav and the esrog, it represents the fact that we take the mitzvahs of Hashem, the commandments of God, and we realize that it's something that's very close to us, like we spoke about previously in regards to Rosh Hashanah. It's very close to us, the Torah. God's commandments, the connection to God, our relationship with God, is something which is already inside of us, which is in our hearts, and we represent that by showing that by taking this lulav and this esrog, which represent all the different aspects. So the esrog represents the heart, etc. Each thing has a different representation, but the idea is we move it back and forth, out, away from us, back towards us to represent the fact that our relationship with God is personal, that God is personally in our lives. God is personally taking care of us. He's not just this transcendent God who doesn't care about things and has only, created the world, heaven forbid, just lets it flow on its own, but rather He is a personal God. God is involved in our lives. God is inside of our hearts. God is alive inside of us, and we have an opportunity through the mitzvahs, through the commandments, to have a personal relationship with God, to manifest God in the world. Now, one of the things that we do on Sukkot, one of the halachas, the laws, the concepts, the mitzvahs, the commandments that we fulfill on Sukkot is that we are makif es hamizbeach. In the times of the temple, in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, they would go around the mizbeach, the altar. They would go around with the lulav. They would go around with the aravis. There were different minhagim, different things that were done. Today, we fulfill this by going around the center of our Batei Knesses, the center of our synagogues, and there's someone who stands in the middle holding a Sefer Torah, and we surround and we go around and we make a big circle. Sometimes the circle can take up the entire Beis Knesses, the entire shul, and we go around him with our lulav and esrog, and by doing this, whenever we have something in the center that we go around, it represents the fact that this is the center of our lives, that this is the center of who we are. This is the center of what we want to be. So the Torah, which represents the commandments of Hashem, the relationship that Hashem expects of us, that which Hashem wants us to do in our relationship with Him, that contract between the Jewish people and Him, that is the center of our lives. That's what we focus on. That's what we go around. That's what we surround. That's the center of what we focus on. So now we have this idea that we see the Torah itself, the mitzvahs, the commandments, the arba minim, they are within us. They're within our hearts. The esrog itself represents the heart, and we surround ourselves at the same time with the divine presence. We realize that Hashem is outside of us, completely surrounding us, completely beyond us, transcendent, and at the same time inside of us, inside of our hearts, inside of our mouths, inside of the essence of who we are and who we want to be. And I think that if we think about it deeply, think about the concept of blessings, we think about the concept of brachas, and we think about the concept of tehillos, the Psalms of David, we can realize that this is really this exact same concept. A bracha, what's a blessing? A blessing is a statement that I want to bring down from the heavens. V'yitin lecha Elokim mital hashamayim. I want God to give down to me all of my physical needs, but I recognize that they come from a place which is transcendent. I recognize that they come from a place which is the heavens. I recognize that they come from something which is outside of me, which is God. So I see that there is this transcendent aspect. It's the Sukkah. It's that which surrounds me. It's God's divine presence. The Ananei HaKavod, the clouds of God's glory. They're in the heavens. They're surrounding me. That's one aspect of the blessings. And that's what Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are trying to bring down. But there's another aspect of blessings. And that's represented by King David himself, by the Psalms of King David. And that's a recognition of the good things that we already have in our lives. It's that which is already inside of us. It's the lulav, it's the esrog, it's the heart which is beating inside of us, that since we were born until today never stopped. Really, from before we were born, from only a few weeks after conception, our heart's been beating. Everything inside of us is working in an unbelievable concert, in a symphony. Unbelievable how Hashem is inside of us, running every aspect of ourselves, personally, on a personal level, on a national level, on a world level. When we think about it, the blessings of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the blessings that they're giving, don't really seem to have so much to do with the blessings that we speak about in the Shemona Esrei. We talk about, Hashem, give me wisdom. Hashem, give me parnasa, give me livelihood. Hashem, give me this, give me that. There's all these different things that we ask Hashem for. They don't seem to be connected. It's more of a request than it is, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are bequeathing something. They're giving something over to their children. The blessings that we speak about in Shemona Esrei don't seem to be the same idea. But I think based on what we're saying, it really explains it beautifully. Because the blessings really are a recognition. They really are a recognition of the fact that God surrounds me, that goodness surrounds me, that God is everywhere, God is transcendent, all good things come from God, from a realm beyond me, and at the same time, somehow, all the blessings I already have, everything is inside of me already. All that I need is really, I already have everything that I need. And it's amazing because these two things seem to be a contradiction. If I already have what I need, then why do I need to ask for anything? And if everything is coming from outside of me, from the heavens, from some faraway place, then how could I believe that it's something that I can find within me? But somehow it's not a steer. Somehow it's not a contradiction. Somehow both of these aspects are true. And that's why when David HaMelech says Psalms, when he begins the Psalms, he continues from the place of Moshe Rabbeinu. He continues from those blessings to teach us that the blessings of the Psalms, the recognition, the praises of God, the fact that we already have what we need. And don't forget, King David lived a very difficult life. And for him to say that I have everything that I need, despite all the challenges and the travails that he went through, is a tremendous statement. It means that I have everything that I need. Somehow it comes from outside of me, somehow it comes from a higher place, but somehow it's already inside of me. That's what King David is teaching us when he continues from the blessings of Moshe Rabbeinu. And I think that this also explains what does it mean that they continued, even though there was a span of time between them. They continued from the place where the other person left off, maybe hundreds of years before him. And I think that the idea is that there's a transcendent place, which is beyond time, which is where the blessings come from. And there's a place where we are, which is right here and right now. And it seems like that they're not connected. It seems like there's a it's disjointed. There's a disconnect between this moment and, let's say, 400 years ago. But somehow, just like that which seems like is outside of me is not connected to that which is inside of me, or the point where I am, the time where I am, this Medrash is teaching us that no, that through blessings, somehow that which is transcendent, that which is beyond time, somehow connects right here to this time and really connects all of the times that ever existed and ever will exist. All of those times are connected such that there's a true continuity between something that happened hundreds of years ago and this very moment. The blessings continue. The blessings are here and now, even though it seems like they were then. No, they continue until now, and there's not really any space between them. And I think a good mashal for it, a good analogy for it is, sometimes you meet a friend, a person who you had a beautiful relationship, you were so connected with, and you haven't seen him in a very long time, and you just pick up from where you left off. It's like it hasn't been any time since you last saw them. I think that's a beautiful example of this idea that when a person is really connected, the connection transcends time. The connection, the blessings, the connectedness that we see between us is the truth of what there is the truth of reality. We really are connected, even though it seems that we're far apart, even though it seems that we might be far apart in our relationship in time as well. I'd like to bless you, and I ask you to bless me. Hashem should help us, that we should be able to recognize how His divine presence indeed surrounds us. And it's also inside of us. Hashem should help us to experience these blessings, to be able to recognize that they come from a place which is beyond us, but at the same time, they're truly found within us. And we should be able to say the Psalms, we should be able to say the praises of God, and recognize how all these amazing blessings are already in our lives. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos and a wonderful end of your holiday. This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.